A middle-aged biker vanishes, leaving his girlfriend to explain what happened.
She said he's just running around with his biker friends doing his thing, but the story started to not make sense.
Christmas before he disappeared, he was talking about putting his son in charge of his will.
This didn't seem like a man that was getting ready to take off and didn't care about his kids.
As police investigate this mysterious disappearance, the story begins to change.
He usually tries to call me every 3 to 4 weeks.
But I was able to scroll back a couple of months and there was no calls from outside the state.
And when buried bodies begin to turn up, detectives realize they might have a repeat killer on their hands.
There's a body in a well, there's a body in a flower bed.
She was nicknamed Black Widow. Whatever she touched seemed to die.
I wrapped him in the sheet, wheeled him out to the ramp, right on into the grave and covered it up.
She got away with it for so long, she figured she could do it again.
On October 18, 2008, Virginia police receive a phone call about a missing 54-year-old man.
My father's name was Cody Bowles. The reason me and my brother Dave made the phone call is because the year prior, I came up there for Thanksgiving. And when I showed up for Thanksgiving, my dad isn't around.
Lee Bowles called up to the residence, wanted to come by and visit with his father, and that was in November of 2007. And Ulisa, Cody's girlfriend, told him that his father was not there.
She said he's just running around with his biker friends doing his thing. It's not that far-fetched. That was a lifestyle that he was interested in. That was something he might want to do. But the story started to not make sense. Standing us up after knowing that I'm driving for 12 or 13 hours to make it to Thanksgiving dinner seemed a little more flaky than what he's capable of.
During Christmas of 2006 was basically the last time the sons had seen their dad in person.
After 2 years pass without hearing from Cody, his son became suspicious.
Ulisa said that he went out and met some people at the Sturgis bike rally, basically stayed out there and moved over near Butte, Montana, and they were in a gang, and they were living off the grid.
Lee didn't want to invade his privacy, but just felt it was just, as time went on, that it just made less and less sense to him.
And that's how we got involved in the investigation.
Investigators' first stop is by Cody's house to speak with Ulisa.
I asked her if she heard from Cody. She said no. We asked her if she had any knowledge where he could be at now, and she said still out in Montana.
She said that he hated the federal government, he hated law enforcement, kind of painting him as a sovereign citizen and an outlaw biker.
Detectives then knew they had to try and figure out why he would just disappear off the face of the earth and not have any contact with any of his loved ones.
Maybe he really did just want to ride around on a motorcycle and live his life that way. But for 2 years, that's a very long time to go and not have any contact. He was the type of dad that would make a phone call on a birthday, that would make a phone call on Christmas. And the more of those that passed, the more we had to accept the realization that there was probably something very wrong here.
Reginald Cody Bowles was born December 1953 in North Chesterfield, Virginia.
His father, Norman Bowles, died at a relatively young age. His mother, Catherine, he loved her to death. I mean, he was kind of a mama's boy. And his upbringing was, kind of standard of the time in Virginia, Christian upbringing. He did not graduate from high school. He was like, I'm gonna go take a trade. So the trade that he took was becoming a printer. He worked for Bird Press, which was one of the local printing companies.
Cody enjoyed machinery and working with his hands. One of his favorite pastimes was fixing and racing motorcycles.
He liked to go fast. People who would see bikes that he made, and they're just like, God, he had so much talent building these things.
In his 20s, Cody seemed to settle down, marrying a young woman named Kathleen and starting a family.
Parents met in around 1972 through a mutual friend. They were married for a couple of years, and then my brother, came about, and me.
But the lure of the open road was too strong for Cody to ignore forever.
My dad was definitely into the motorcycle lifestyle, and I believe that was a huge factor in separating them. My mom, she's a homebody. She's not the kind to want to go out and party and all that sort of thing. They ended up getting divorced. After the divorce, they were cordial with each other. They weren't best friends anymore, but they were nice.
Even though Cody was divorced, he still had connection with his two sons, and they were very important to him. He did a lot of things, that dads do with their sons.
He loved the mountains. I'd go on motorcycle rides with him on the back of his bike. That was always fun.
In his early 30s, Cody decided to give marriage another try. But once again, his work hard, play hard lifestyle caught up with him.
It was right around 1985. He was roughly 35 years old, and he had a major heart attack. It was, swing shifts, taking, whatever it took to keep yourself awake, and then taking something to put yourself to sleep had a lot to do with damage in his heart. He was in a coma for 2 months. He had to relearn everything again. That situation there definitely strengthened us because I thought I was going to lose him.
With the help of a pacemaker and medication, Cody eventually recovered, but his marriage did not.
After my dad got divorced, he moved back in with his mother, my grandmother. He got disability, he got some type of pension, and he continued with his hobbies, with his motorcycles and his go-karts.
The last thing Cody expected was another chance at love, but 1 year later, that's exactly what he got.
1996 is when Cody came across Ulisa Chavers. She worked at a convenience store, 7-Eleven in town, and that's where they struck up a conversation.
Next thing you know, it turned into a relationship. Eventually, they ended up moving in together. I liked her. She had a lot of stories. They ended up purchasing a property in Louisa County just to have more land around them and kind of to get away from things. He had a warehouse where he could work on his motorcycles.
Now, after 12 years with Ulisa, it seems Cody's wanderlust might have gotten the better of him again. However, Cody's son Lee suspects there's more to the story. But according to Ulisa, Cody's sudden departure 2 years ago was triggered by changes in his family's dynamics.
She said that Cody's mom lived next door and that both of them were taking care of her. And then after she passed, Cody felt like, he was relieved of a bunch of responsibilities and he just wanted to have some freedom. I asked how come he didn't reach out and talk to any of his kids. She said that he wasn't happy with them.
Ulisa told us he felt that his kids were always after him for money, and he felt he needed to get away.
As far as her claim that we were trying to get money and stuff like that, that's not the relationship we ever had with my dad.
He was getting the $1,400 a month from Social Security. That's not much money.
So detectives are left trying to piece through what sounds like a complicated family dynamic and figure out just who's telling the truth.
When we left, we were suspicious, even though she was calm and she was polite. It didn't add up for us.
We were thinking that she was hiding something. We didn't know what it was.
Coming up, agencies collaborate in an attempt to locate Cody.
We suspended the benefits until we got eyes and talked to Cody.
And investigators turn up the heat on Ulisa Chavers.
And I can assure you that he's safe and sound and having the time of his life.
After learning of Cody Bowles' disappearance, what detectives are hearing from his girlfriend, Ulisa Chavers, contradicts what his son Lee told them. Hoping to iron out some of the discrepancies, they talk to Cody Bowles' oldest son, David. He says the last time he saw his father was Christmas 2006.
Christmas before he disappeared, when they had a family gathering, Cody was talking about naming his son David, executor of his estate, in charge of his will.
Because of the trauma that my father had during his heart attack, he was required to have a medical and financial power of attorney. Ulisa Chavers ended up establishing power of attorney over everything my father had over him medically, financially.
David Bowles had indicated his dad didn't really feel comfortable for her keeping the power of attorney, and that he was strongly considering switching the power of attorney over to David. They also talked about the future as far as going on a fishing trip, and they were all looking forward to that. So this didn't seem like a man that was getting ready to take off and didn't care about his kids and that type of thing.
It was really out of character for him to wait so long and not get a hold of any of us. So me and my brother decided to eventually call the police 2 years later.
If something bad's going to happen to somebody, money is quite often the motive. So it makes you think, well, maybe she didn't want that to happen, because Ulisa was very dependent on Cody financially.
While Cody's sons both agree their father enjoyed his freedom, they don't believe he'd risk his health by going off the grid for this long.
We had expressed that our father had a major heart attack at one point in his life, and he was reliant on quite a few medications to keep everything balanced.
We went to the local pharmacist. They advised that he didn't have any prescriptions refilled for a couple of years.
Then we asked if his prescriptions were transferred to any other pharmacy or anything in the United States. They said no.
This is a man who needs to take this medication to live, and no record anywhere in the country that Cody Bowles is picking up his heart meds, and that sends up major red flags for detectives.
Armed with this information, detectives question Ulisa again, this time with a strategy in mind.
We felt like she was trying to deceive us. We decided that the best thing that we could do is go talk to her and lock her into a story, to let her tell us anything she wanted to tell us, and then use the information she gave us to see if what she was saying was actually true.
As they walk her through the story, the details begin to change.
We started asking her if she had been in touch with Cody, and she says that he had been calling, but it's sporadic. She doesn't have a phone number to call back.
When was the last time he called?
2 weeks ago. He usually tries to call me every 3 to 4 weeks to make sure I'm okay, I guess, or whatever.
Do you have caller ID on your phone or anything?
Yeah, I do.
She let us look at it. I was able to scroll back a couple of months, and there was no calls from outside the state.
When investigators ask Ulisa how Cody is supporting himself in the wilds of Montana, her answer only increases their suspicions.
She said that his Social Security check was about $1,400 a month, and that he just withdraws it whenever he needs it. She said it was going into their joint account.
Does he have an ATM card? Or?
Yeah, he's got an ATM card.
If it's showing like an ATM withdrawal, it should show what town and stuff that he's withdrawing out of.
She was cooperative and went through the motions of trying to get it on the computer, but there was no indication that he was pulling money out of ATMs from out of state or was making purchases anywhere.
You know, we're thinking that Ulisa's lying to us, that it adds more evidence that foul play did occur.
We asked her, how was Cody doing without his medications? It says, to our understanding, he couldn't live without them. And she explained that he had had a medical procedure that had corrected that. He didn't need the medications anymore.
He had heart trouble for a while, and then they put a defibrillator pacemaker in there until they got federal approval on the LASIK surgery. And they operated on him and cut out a third of the bottom third of his heart, the chamber at the bottom, that was causing the problems, and he had no more problems after that.
The boys made it seem like he had the heart attack, he's on medication basically for the rest of his life. And Ulisa's telling us, hey, he had surgery, had everything repaired, he's healthy.
And I can agree with it. He's safe and sound and having the time of his life. The only thing he never could do was having responsibilities.
That's my cell phone number. Next time you talk to him, just ask him to call me. I got a couple of questions for him, and we put the whole matter to rest, okay?
The easiest part of Ulisa's story to verify is her claim that Cody no longer needs his medication.
I did call his cardiologist's office, spoke with a nurse, and I did ask her, I said, well, hypothetically, if a man came in and had that kind of condition, will surgery fix it? Or he could, get rid of the pacemaker or the defibrillator? And she said no. He would always have those two and be on medication for the rest of his life.
This woman who's given you these consistently conflicting stories is now saying he's the one person in the world that no longer needs a pacemaker and defibrillator because he had LASIK surgery. It's absolutely bonkers.
As the investigation into Cody Bowles' disappearance continues, detectives have just confirmed his girlfriend Ulisa Chavers lied about his medical history. They now have reason to obtain a warrant for her phone records.
And she said that, he's called her several times over a period of time, and we could not find where that happened on her phone.
The couple's bank statements don't support Ulisa's claims either.
We couldn't find any activity on his bank account other than her drawing money out of it. Now, the part about just going off the grid with a bunch of friends, we couldn't say yes or no whether that was correct or not. We were searching all over the country for him, and it got to the point to where I said to Lieutenant Porter, call Social Security, cut off his Social Security, and he'll come to us. He might be upset, but he'll come to us.
It was fall 2008, and our office received a call from a detective in Ulisa County Sheriff's Department. He determined Reginald Bowles was missing and receiving Social Security benefits. So we were asked to assist with the investigation. Charlottesville SSA District Office actually reached out to Ulisa as the representative payee to ask for his whereabouts. She did not cooperate with Social Security. So ultimately, Social Security suspended the benefits so she would no longer receive those benefits until we got eyes and talked to Cody.
Social Security agents stop Cody's payments, but after 2 months, he still doesn't surface. To detectives, it seems evident that everything Ulisa's told them is a lie.
Every time they tried to corroborate something she said, it's just not adding up.
Investigators pay Ulisa another visit on February 24th, 2009. But despite their suspicions, Ulisa assures them Cody is very much alive.
To our surprise, she goes, Cody was here over Christmas.
Did he say what he's been doing since
Yeah.
between Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Yeah, they go around and help with the cleanup from storms and
Okay.
stuff like that. We do volunteer work.
Did you think to give me a call?
No, I didn't. I got a picture of him for Christmas, though.
Do you?
Yeah.
What's it?
Ulisa tells detectives they celebrated Christmas next door at her daughter's home.
Ulisa showed us the pictures, and it was on a small digital camera, little tiny screen, but it was very clear. And it had a date stamp on there of December 25th of 2008, and they're actually exchanging gifts.
I said, can I have the SD card out of that? I like to have the pictures downloaded on my computer. And she goes, well, it's my daughter's camera. Her daughter lived next door. The daughter said, sure, pulled out the SD card and gave it to me. I asked her about being there at Christmas time, and she said she was out of town, which we thought was kind of strange because, why would Cody and Ulisa come over to the trailer to celebrate Christmas when her daughter wasn't there? We drove back to the office, put the SD card in my computer and brought it up.
When detectives examine the photo more closely, they see it for what it is. Another of Ulisa's lies.
You could tell that was an old picture, but it looked like it was a picture of a picture, and it wasn't a very good job.
Cody's son Lee confirms the photo was taken many years ago.
The moment that I seen that picture and realized that she was going through the trouble of furnishing a picture of a picture, I was like, all right, now she's creating evidence, she's covering something up. The hugest thing was the age, everything didn't line up. When you looked at the picture, it didn't look like their current age.
He said, yeah, that's what Ulisa, my dad, looked like 10 years ago. And there was a VHS tape rewinder, it looked like a little orange car that she was holding up and he was holding it. Carlton goes, man, I remember that. That was in the living room and it was covered in dust.
At this point, we're not believing that Cody ran away from home. I'm just going to be blunt. It looks like Cody's dead.
Coming up, a search of the property reveals the disturbing truth.
The stench of death. I mean, that's the first thing that hits you in the face.
And a chilling explanation unearths more tragedy.
She says it wasn't a good idea to leave a body behind in the backyard, so I decided to dig them up.
Ulisa Chavers' lies have started to stack up in the missing persons investigation for her boyfriend, Cody Bowles.
The SD card represented the smoking gun. She had just handed us the piece of evidence that we had been looking for all along. I think if we take this to a magistrate and show him all the other things that we had discovered in this case, that we should be able to get a search warrant for her property. And that's exactly what we did.
On March 6, 2009, 5 months after Cody was reported missing, investigators bring search teams to go over every inch of the property.
There was going to be 3 teams of investigators and to search this 11-acre property and the house and in another residence on the property. We also brought with us that day a cadaver dog.
Several outbuildings in the house and trailer and everything. And the dogs started hitting on the well. When we popped the top off of this bored well that was in this field, the stench of death. I mean, that's the first thing that hits you in the face. I shone a light down in there and you could see something near the bottom of the well. I crawled down in the well. I took a ladder. We got like a shark hook and we sent it down there and I was able to snag it. And eventually we brought a body up. And it was wrapped in a sleeping bag and a blanket. We were able to unzip the sleeping bag and look at it, and one of the very first things we saw was a pacemaker. As soon as I saw the pacemaker, I knew it was Cody.
As Ulisa watches the recovery efforts from inside the home, she decides to change her story yet again.
My particular assignment was to sit with Ulisa and talk to her while this search was going on. And I said, Ulisa, look, they found him.
I need for you to tell me entirely what happened. Just tell me about his death.
He died.
Okay.
He was apparently the defibrillator. The battery run down. He refused to go to the doctor, to the hospital. He wouldn't let me call 911.
He just died in the house, just passed away during the night.
When she told us that he had died of natural causes and that he didn't want the authorities at his house, none of us believed that.
I happened to be in town and I got a phone call from Howard Porter. And I knew it wasn't good. And then my heart sunk. What would you call it? The closure to everything that day.
She was charged with disposal of a dead body. Believe it or not, you just can't go throw people in the well.
We ended up having 10 counts of embezzlement. Every time the check, the Social Security check, goes into the bank account, that's a charge.
On March 6, 2009, the remains are examined during an autopsy.
They're able to determine that it is Cody based off of the pacemaker that he'd had installed because of his heart issues. They find a drug called benzotropine in his system in extremely high levels. And benzotropine is used for Parkinson's. But there was no indication talking to Cody Bull's family or in any of his medical records that he had Parkinson's. So why was this drug in his system?
I started researching and talking to experts and toxicologists, and they said a person with a defibrillator and a pacemaker should not be taking benzotropine. It actually slows your heart down.
But without proof she drugged Cody, prosecutors are unable to charge her with murder.
We needed some cause of death, and the ME just wasn't able to determine the cause of death due to the condition of the body. And at that point, I was kind of freaking out that she's going to get away with murder and she's just going to be out in about 3 or 4 years.
Looking for any evidence to build their case against Ulisa Chavers, detectives pay a visit next door to speak with her daughter, Teresa.
We asked about Ulisa's past, if she was ever married before, and Teresa said, yeah, she was married once before.
According to Teresa, her biological father, Clint Chavers, also died under mysterious circumstances in 1994.
Clint was from the greatest generation. He had served in World War II, and just after leaving the military, he became an owner of a bar, and then he became a truck driver.
He was significantly older than Ulisa Chavers. They met in the 70s when Clint was already around 50 years old and Ulisa was in her 20s. They got married, they had one daughter, and him being so much older than Ulisa, he started to have a number of health issues. There had been some sort of accident that led to the amputation of one of his legs, which left him in a wheelchair.
Teresa tells detectives she wasn't there when Clint died, and her mother wouldn't tell her what happened.
Her mom called her while she was in school and told her not to come home, stay at some friend's house. Ulisa told Teresa that her father had passed away. The VA sent the rescue squad out, picked up the body to have it cremated. After the weekend passed, she came home. She said the house was really clean and a strong odor of bleach was in the house.
And as far as she knows, that's what happened to her dad, who she said had been sick for a long time. She was a teenage girl in high school, and that seemed plausible.
Teresa says there was no funeral and she never saw her father's body. Investigators wonder if Ulisa was trying to cover something up.
We contacted the VA, and they found out very quickly that VA doesn't pick up bodies, and that they don't know what earth she's talking about.
A call to the Social Security office reveals they were never notified of Clint's death.
So we determined that Ulisa held a joint account with Clint Chavers, and she was receiving his Social Security benefits from 1994 until 2009 in that joint account.
There's no explanation for what happened to Clint Chavers. No record that he had died. So now investigators, of course, are going, well, what happened to his body?
We went back out to the regional jail to re-interview Ulisa Chavers about Clint Chavers. She just said he died naturally. I couldn't believe it.
The similarities to Cody Bowles' death don't stop there.
She admitted to the deputies that Clint's body was in the backyard of her old rental property in Amelia, Virginia.
I wrapped him in the sheet, got him in the wheelchair, wheeled him out to the ramp. And where the ramp went right down beside where I had dug the grave. There was evidence just for easing right on into the grave and covered it up.
Ulisa says Clint is buried behind the house they were renting in Amelia County, about 60 miles away. Detectives realize the evidence they need might be buried with him.
We found that property, requested consent to search, and Amelia County Sheriff's Office, Ulisa County Sheriff's Department, and Social Security OIG agents. We went out to the property.
Like before, we brought the cadaver dog in, and they had a forensic anthropologist on scene to supervise.
We're sifting through all the dirt, and during it, we found some small pieces, which I thought were actually rocks. Because that professor happened to be there, he says, that's not a rock, that's part of a skull.
While most of the body is recovered, the rest of the skull is missing, which makes an identification difficult.
She says, and I was moving and I thought it wasn't a good idea to leave a body behind in the backyard. So I decided to dig Clint up and I was going to move the body.
When I went to start taking the body out of the ground, the neck broke and I ended up with a head in my hand. And then somebody pulled up in the driveway and I had the head in a bag, plastic bag, and took it onto the landfill and got rid of it.
One of the most bizarre things about this entire story is just how cold and unemotional Ulisa Chavers is throughout all this. She's just matter of fact, like she's recounting her grocery list.
As with Cody Bowles, detectives still need to prove that Ulisa not only disposed of Clint's body, but that she was responsible for his death.
The remains are taken to the medical examiner's office. Again, undetermined cause of death, because there's no obvious sign of trauma and the head is missing. So we're not thinking we're going to be able to solve the Clint Chavers homicide. This is probably a criminal matter, but not enough to go on at this point. So you just have to go back and keep digging.
Following Ulisa Chavers' arrest, Virginia residents are shocked to learn there might have been a repeat killer hiding in their midst.
At this point, we now know Ulisa Chavers is tied to two bodies. There's a body in a well, there's a body in a flower bed, but investigators are faced with being able to prove premeditation, that it wasn't an accident.
She was nicknamed Black Widow. Whatever she touched seemed to die.
Ms. Chavers maintained that she was innocent of killing anyone. She admitted that she took the money and that she disposed of the bodies, but she completely disavowed any killing.
With the state medical examiner unable to refute Ulisa's claims, investigators decide to involve new forensic experts.
In the case of Clint Chavers, the most important piece of evidence was those three little bones that they recovered when they were exhuming his body.
Dr. Onsley from the Smithsonian Institute was able to determine that cause of death for Clint Chavers in Amelia County was actually either a significant blow to the head or a gunshot wound based upon the fragments of the skull that we were able to give him. That in itself led us to a murder charge in Amelia County.
In the case of Ulisa's boyfriend, Cody Bowles, the autopsy showed he had elevated levels of a Parkinson's drug in his system. A test run by a new lab confirms that's most likely what killed him.
He had 4 times the lethal limit of benztropine for a drug he should not even be taking. To me, that's what happened. She poisoned him.
He did not take this medication, and we never really did find out where the medication came from.
After the search warrant, we were able to seize her computer and found that she had been doing research on that Parkinson's disease drug and the effects it had on somebody with a heart condition.
When you add in all these factors, it's enough that we're going to take a chance. So we indicted her for first-degree murder, even though the autopsy said undetermined cause of death.
Facing new evidence, Ulisa and her attorney decide not to risk taking the 2 murder cases to trial and reach a plea agreement instead.
She entered an Alford plea, which means she's not going to plead guilty, but she recognizes there's enough evidence to prove her guilty.
The judge rules that Ulisa will serve time for both victims concurrently, for a total of 43 years in prison. A confession was not a requirement of Ulisa's plea deal, but investigators have their theories about why she committed the murders.
In the case of Clint Chavers, Ulisa Chavers snapped because they had a lot of domestic issues as he was getting older. So apparently, Ulisa got tired of that, did away with him. And then she decided to keep on collecting his Social Security for 15 more years after he died.
I think that Ulisa, in her mind, since she got away with it for so long, she figured she could do it again.
I think her motive to kill Cody was financial. He was talking about making his sons the beneficiary and executor estate. That's going to cut her off financially.
It's unfortunate how he had to die. He had no idea that the enemy that was going to kill him was within his own house.
Ulisa Chavers left so many victims, from her own family, her own daughter, to Cody Bowles' kids, to the scars of just knowing how their loved ones died, that they were murdered. So in some ways, how do you get justice for a case like this?
My father used to say that to me, that you're not going to be here forever. He did live in the time that he was here. I'll remember him to be a happy guy that enjoyed life.
The complexity of human relationships often presents a profound paradox, where the very places we seek solace, safety, and companionship can occasionally become the breeding grounds for the most calculated acts of betrayal. In the quiet landscapes of rural Virginia, a series of events unfolded that would challenge the local community to confront the reality of a quiet, smiling danger operating entirely in their midst. This is not merely a tale of a mysterious disappearance, but a deep exploration into the psychology of greed, the limits of domestic deception, and the ultimate triumph of systematic, patient investigative work over cold, calculated malice. It is a narrative that honors the unbreakable bonds of family vigilance while casting a mildly satirical light on the clumsy, almost comical loopholes that even the most practiced criminals leave behind when they assume their intellectual superiority over the systems of justice. To understand the tragedy that befell Reginald Cody Bowles, one must first understand the man himself, whose life was defined by a love for mechanical precision, the thrill of the open road, and an enduring connection to his family. Born in December of the year 1953 in North Chesterfield, Virginia, Cody grew up under the standard Christian values of his time and region. The loss of his father at a relatively young age created a particularly close bond between Cody and his mother, Catherine, whom he loved deeply. Though he did not complete a traditional high school education, Cody possessed a natural intelligence that was practical and hands-on. He chose to learn a trade, finding his calling as a printer for a local printing establishment known as Bird Press. This profession required a meticulous attention to detail and a comfort with complex, heavy machinery, traits that Cody carried over into his personal life. His true passion lay in the world of motorcycles and mechanical engineering, Cody was not merely an enthusiast who enjoyed riding. He was an exceptionally talented builder and builder of custom machines. Those who observed his work often expressed immense admiration for his ability to transform raw metal and discarded parts into high-performance, visually stunning vehicles. He liked to go fast, and the camaraderie of the motorcycle community offered him an escape from the routine of daily labor. In his 20s, specifically around the year 1972, Cody sought to balance this free-spirited lifestyle by marrying a young woman named Kathleen and beginning a family. This union blessed him with 2 sons, David and Lee, who would grow up to admire their father's unique talents and warm nature. However, the magnetic pull of the open road and the demanding lifestyle of the motorcycle culture eventually proved incompatible with his spouse's preference for a quiet, stable home life. The couple divorced, yet they maintained a remarkably civil and cordial relationship, ensuring that their split did not sever the vital connection between Cody and his growing boys. Cody remained an active, loving presence in the lives of his sons, taking them on motorcycle rides through the scenic Virginia mountains and engaging in classic fatherly activities that left lasting, positive impressions on their young minds. Life took a dramatic and life-altering turn for Cody when he was roughly 35 years of age, in the year 1985. The combination of grueling shift work, erratic sleep schedules, and the physical toll of his high-energy lifestyle culminated in a massive, near-fatal heart attack. The severity of the cardiac event was so profound that Cody remained in a coma for 2 full months. His survival was nothing short of a miracle, but the recovery was a long, arduous process that required him to relearn basic motor functions and cognitive skills. This period of intense hardship served to strengthen the emotional bond between Cody and his sons, who stood by him as he fought to reclaim his life. Though he emerged from the coma, Cody's physical health was permanently altered. He was placed on disability and received a pension, and his survival became entirely dependent on a delicate medical regimen. This regimen included a variety of daily medications to regulate his cardiovascular system, as well as the surgical installation of a pacemaker and a defibrillator. High-tech devices designed to monitor his heartbeat and deliver life-saving electrical shocks should his heart rhythm falter. He moved back into his mother's residence, continuing to enjoy his hobbies smaller scale by working on go-karts and motorcycles. It was in the year 1996 that Cody's path crossed with a woman named Ulisa Chavers, who was then working at a local 7-Eleven convenience store. The initial encounters blossomed into a romantic relationship, and within a relatively short period, the two decided to move in together. Eventually, they purchased a parcel of land in Ulisa County, seeking a more secluded environment where Cody could have ample space for a warehouse to work on his beloved motorcycles. For 12 years, their domestic arrangement appeared stable on the surface, but beneath the quiet exterior of their rural home, a dangerous dynamic was taking shape. Ulisa, who was several years older than Cody, quickly established a dominant position in his life, eventually obtaining both medical and financial power of attorney over him. This legal arrangement, born out of Cody's post-heart attack vulnerabilities, gave her complete control over his financial assets and his healthcare decisions, a level of authority that would prove to be a double-edged sword. The fragile peace of this domestic arrangement began to dissolve, following the passing of Cody's mother, Catherine, who had lived next door and had been a focal point of their caregiving efforts. By the year 2006, subtle shifts in Cody's attitude were noticed by those closest to him. During a family gathering at Christmas in the year 2006, the last time his sons would see him in person, Cody expressed a growing discomfort with Ulisa maintaining sole power of attorney over his affairs. He initiated conversations with his eldest son, David, about officially changing this legal status, proposing to make David the executor of his estate and placing him in charge of his will. The father and his sons also enthusiastically planned an upcoming fishing trip, looking forward to spending quality time together in the near future. These were the actions of a man deeply invested in his future, his health, and his children, completely contradicting any notion of a man planning to abandon his family or his responsibilities. Yet, as the months rolled by, Cody vanished from the lives of his loved ones. The first major alarms sounded during Thanksgiving of the year 2007. Lee Bowles, having driven a grueling 12 to 13 hours to visit his father for the holiday, arrived in Virginia only to be turned away at the door. Ulisa calmly informed him that Cody was not present, claiming that he had gone off with some of his motorcycle friends to participate in the Sturgis Bike Rally and had subsequently decided to move to Butte, Montana, to live off the grid with a motorcycle gang. She painted a picture of Cody as an anti-government outlaw, a sovereign citizen who wanted nothing to do with modern society, law enforcement, or even his own children, whom she claimed he was angry with for supposedly asking for money. For a time, the family tried to respect Cody's privacy, knowing his lifelong love for the motorcycle culture. However, as the months turned into a full year, and then two, the complete lack of communication began to feel deeply wrong. Cody was a father who never missed a birthday, a holiday, or a milestone without calling his sons. The silence was deafening, and the explanation provided by Ulisa grew increasingly implausible. Why would a man whose very life depended on a complex array of cardiac medications and a carefully calibrated pacemaker suddenly decide to live a rugged, off-the-grid existence in the harsh climate of Montana without any apparent medical support? In October of the year 2008, driven by a growing sense of dread, Lee and David Bowles made the crucial decision to contact the Ulisa County Sheriff's Department to officially report their father missing. This phone call set in motion an investigation that would be led by Lieutenant Howard Porter and Virginia State Police Special Agent Carlton Johnson. Upon reviewing the initial missing persons report, these seasoned investigators immediately recognized that the narrative surrounding Cody's disappearance was riddled with inconsistencies. Their very first step was to visit the Ulisa County residence to interview Ulisa Chavers. During this initial encounter, Ulisa maintained an attitude of calm, polite cooperation. She reiterating her story that Cody had relocated to Montana, repeating the claim that he despised the federal government and law enforcement, and suggesting that he simply wished to live out his days on the open road. While her demeanor was unshakable, the investigators left the property with a distinct feeling that something was being deliberately concealed. They understood that in missing persons cases, the key to uncovering the truth often lies in the meticulous verification of the small, mundane details of the subject's life, details that a deceptive individual might overlook. The first critical clue came from a systematic investigation into Cody's medical history. The detectives visited the local pharmacy, where Cody had historically filled his vital heart prescriptions. The pharmacist revealed that Cody had not filled a single prescription in over 2 years. Furthermore, a nationwide search of pharmaceutical databases confirmed that none of his critical medications had been transferred or filled at any other pharmacy in the entire country. For a man with a severe cardiac condition, a 2-year absence of medication was essentially a death sentence. Armed with this alarming revelation, Lieutenant Porter and Special Agent Johnson returned to question Ulisa, employing a classic investigative strategy. They allowed her to speak freely, locking her into a specific narrative that they could then test against established facts. When confronted with the reality of Cody's medical dependency, Ulisa did not falter. Instead, she manufactured an explanation that was as creative as it was scientifically absurd. She claimed that Cody's heart condition had been entirely cured by a revolutionary medical procedure. According to her, doctors had obtained special federal approval to perform a surgery that involved cutting away the damaged bottom third of Cody's heart, thereby rendering his pacemaker and defibrillator obsolete and eliminating his need for daily medication. She even referred to this cardiovascular surgery as a form of LASIK surgery, a term typically reserved for corrective eye procedures. To any rational observer, and certainly to the experienced investigators, this claim was a glaring red flag. Lieutenant Porter immediately contacted Cody's cardiologist, speaking with a specialized medical professional who confirmed that such a scenario was utterly impossible. A patient with Cody's extensive cardiac damage would always require a pacemaker and defibrillator, and would remain dependent on life-sustaining medications for the remainder of his life. Ulisa's attempt to use advanced medical jargon to explain away a complete lack of prescription refills was a major misstep, revealing a profound desperation to keep her narrative alive. The investigators then turned their attention to Cody's financial records. Ulisa had claimed that Cody was supporting himself in Montana by accessing his monthly Social Security disability benefit, which amounted to approximately $1,400. She asserted that this money was deposited into their joint bank account and that Cody would simply withdraw funds using his automated teller machine card whenever he needed cash. However, when the detectives obtained a warrant to examine the bank statements, they discovered another massive crack in her story. There was absolutely no transaction history indicating any financial activity outside the state of Virginia. Every single withdrawal from the account had been conducted locally. Right in the area where Ulisa lived, the automated teller machine card had never traveled to Montana, and Cody's entire monthly income was being systematically drained by Ulisa herself. Furthermore, Ulisa's claim that Cody maintained sporadic telephone contact with her was quickly dismantled when she allowed investigators to briefly examine her mobile phone caller identification logs. They scrolled back through several months of history and found absolutely no record of any incoming calls from out-of-state numbers. It became increasingly clear that every single pillar of Ulisa's defense was built on a foundation of easily disprovable falsehoods. Recognizing that they were dealing with a highly manipulative individual, the investigators decided to collaborate with the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General. Special Agent Adrienne Messer of the Charlottesville District Office was brought into the investigation. Because Ulisa was acting as the representative payee for Cody's benefits, she was legally required to cooperate with the agency and provide accurate information regarding his whereabouts and well-being. When she failed to provide satisfactory answers to the Social Security Administration, the agency made the strategic decision to completely suspend Cody's monthly payments. The rationale behind this move was simple and logical. If Cody was indeed alive and living off the grid, the sudden cutoff of his primary source of income would inevitably force him to contact the agency or return to Virginia to resolve the issue. 2 months passed following the suspension of the benefits, and yet there was absolutely no sign of Cody Bowles. No phone calls were received by the Social Security Administration, and no inquiries were made about the missing funds. For the detectives, this silence was the final confirmation of their darkest suspicion. Cody Bowles was not riding a motorcycle through the mountains of Montana. He was dead, and Ulisa Chavers was actively exploiting his identity to continue collecting his government benefits. On February 24th, in the year 2009, Lieutenant Porter and Special Agent Johnson paid another visit to Ulisa's home. In a surprising turn of events, Ulisa presented a bold new piece of evidence. She claimed that Cody had actually returned to Virginia to visit her over the recent Christmas holiday, and that they had celebrated together at her daughter S trailer next door. To prove this, she produced a small digital camera and showed the investigators a photo on the tiny viewing screen. The image clearly depicted Cody and Ulisa exchanging Christmas gifts, complete with a digital date stamp indicating December 25th of the year 2008. When the investigators asked for permission to keep the secure digital card from the camera to download and examine the image on a larger computer, Ulisa's daughter, who was present, readily agreed and handed over the card. Back at the sheriff's office, the detectives uploaded the photograph, and the true nature of Ulisa's deception was immediately exposed. Upon close inspection, the image was not a direct digital photograph of a live scene. Rather, it was a photograph of a physical, printed photograph that had been taken many years prior. The quality was poor, and the subjects appeared significantly younger than their current ages. The definitive proof of this photographic forgery came when the image was shown to Cody's son, Lee, and a family friend. They immediately recognized that the picture was at least 10 years old. Furthermore, they pointed out a highly specific detail in the background of the image: an orange, car-shaped videocassette rewinder. This unique item had been a fixture in Cody's home a decade earlier, and investigators recalled seeing that exact same toy sitting in Cody's current residence, covered in a thick layer of dust. Ulisa's attempt to manufacture digital evidence by photographing an old print was a massive tactical error, providing the detectives with the concrete proof of active cover-up and obstruction that they needed to secure a search warrant for the property. On March 6th, in the year 2009, a highly coordinated search operation was launched on the 11-acre property in Ulisa County. 3 teams of investigators, accompanied by forensic experts and a specialized cadaver dog, began a meticulous sweep of the land, the main residence, and the adjacent outbuildings. It did not take long for the canine handler to report a significant alert. The cadaver dog showed an intense interest in an old bored water well located in a field on the property. When the heavy concrete cover of the well was removed, the unmistakable odor of human decomposition billowed out, confirming the team's worst fears. Lieutenant Porter shone a flashlight down into the deep, dark shaft, revealing a suspicious shape near the bottom. Utilizing a ladder and a specialized recovery hook, investigators carefully descended into the well and retrieved a heavy bundle wrapped securely in a sleeping bag and a blanket. Upon unzipping the sleeping bag, they discovered the badly decomposed remains of a male. Among the skeletal structures, the investigators immediately spotted a metallic medical device nestled in the chest cavity: Cody's pacemaker. This unique device, with its registered serial number, provided an instant, indisputable identification of the victim. As the recovery team worked outside, Special Agent Johnson remained inside the house with Ulisa, who was watching the unfolding events through the window. Recognizing that the game was finally over, Johnson looked at both of her and calmly stated that the body had been found, urging her to tell the truth about what had occurred. Facing the undeniable physical evidence, Ulisa shifted her story once again. She admitted that Cody was dead, but claimed that he had passed away from natural causes during the night. She asserted that he had adamantly refused to seek medical attention or go to a hospital, and had begged her not to call 911. She claimed that, out of respect for his wishes and a fear of the authorities, she had simply hidden his body in the well. While Ulisa was immediately arrested and charged with the illegal disposal of a dead body and 10 counts of financial embezzlement, the investigators were far from finished. They were convinced that Cody's death was not the result of natural causes. An autopsy was conducted, and because of the advanced state of decomposition, the medical examiner was initially unable to determine a definitive physical cause of death. However, a comprehensive toxicology screening revealed a highly unusual finding: extremely elevated, lethal levels of a prescription medication called benztropine in Cody's system. Benztropine is a drug primarily prescribed to manage the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. A thorough review of Cody's extensive medical files, as well as interviews with his family, confirmed that he had never been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and had never been prescribed this medication. More importantly, the cardiologist confirmed that benztropine is a powerful drug that slows the heart rate, making it extremely dangerous and potentially lethal for anyone. Vekep had a severe heart condition, a pacemaker, and a defibrillator. Despite this critical finding, the prosecutors faced a significant legal hurdle. They needed to prove that Ulisa had actively administered the drug to Cody with the intent to end his life. The breakthrough in the murder case came from 2 distinct avenues of investigation: digital forensics and a deep dive into Ulisa's personal history. A forensic analysis of the computer seized from Ulisa's residence revealed that she had conducted extensive internet searches regarding the specific effects of benztropine on individuals with cardiovascular disease. She had deliberately researched how the drug could be used to quietly and effectively induce a fatal cardiac event in someone with a heart condition like Cody's. This digital footprint provided the essential evidence of premeditation and design. Meanwhile, investigators sought to learn more about Ulisa's past by interviewing her daughter, Teresa. When questioned about her mother's history, Teresa revealed a shocking and deeply unsettling detail. She mentioned that her biological father, Clint Chavers, had also died under highly mysterious circumstances. In the year 1994, when Teresa was a young teenager in high school, Clint Chavers was a proud member of the Greatest Generation, having served his country during the Second World War. After his military service, he had operated a local tavern and worked as a commercial truck driver. He was significantly older than Ulisa, and as he aged, he suffered from severe health problems, including an accident that resulted in the amputation of one of his legs, confining him to a wheelchair. According to Teresa, she returned home from school one day in the year 1994 to find her mother behaving very strangely. Ulisa instructed Teresa not to enter the house, telling her to stay with a friend for the weekend. When Teresa was finally allowed to return home, the entire house was immaculately clean and possessed a powerful, overwhelming smell of chemical bleach. Ulisa coldly informed her daughter that her father had passed away and that a vehicle from the Veterans Administration had come to collect his body for cremation. There was no funeral service, no viewing, and Teresa never saw her father's body or received his ashes. As a young girl, she accepted her mother's explanation, assuming that Clint's chronic illnesses had finally claimed his life. The detectives immediately recognized the chilling parallels between the two cases. They contacted the Veterans Administration, which quickly confirmed that they had absolutely no record of transporting or cremating Clint Chavers' body, noting that such services were entirely outside their operational protocols. Furthermore, a query sent to the Social Security Administration revealed that Clint's death had never been reported to the government. For 15 years, Ulisa had maintained a joint bank account in Clint's name, systematically receiving and spending his monthly retirement benefits. The implications of this discovery were staggering. The investigators realized that they were likely dealing with Kep Tehat, a serial perpetrator who had successfully concealed her first major crime for a decade and a half, emboldening her to employ the exact same financial and homicidal tactics against Cody Bowles. They returned to the regional jail to confront Ulisa with this new information. Faced with the evidence of her long-term financial fraud, Ulisa's composure finally cracked slightly. She admitted that Clint had died in their rental home in Amelia County, Virginia, in the year 1994, claiming once again that his death was due to natural causes. She confessed that she had buried his body in a shallow grave directly beneath a flower bed in the backyard of that rental property, which was located approximately 60 miles away. A massive excavation operation was launched at the former rental property in Amelia County, involving local sheriff's deputies, state police, and a highly respected forensic anthropologist from the Smithsonian Institution, Dr. Douglas Owsley. Utilizing specialized archaeological techniques, the team carefully sifted through the soil beneath the old flower bed. Their patience was rewarded when they recovered a significant portion of a human skeleton. However, a major challenge arose. The skull of the skeleton was largely missing, which threatened to make a definitive identification and a determination of the cause of death extremely difficult. When confronted via Kep Tehat this missing piece of the puzzle, Ulisa offered an explanation that highlighted her absolute lack of empathy and the cold, routine manner in which she viewed human remains. She admitted to the investigators that when she was preparing to move from the Amelia County property years earlier, she decided it was too risky to leave a body buried in the backyard. She attempted to dig up Clint's remains to relocate them. During this gruesome process, she claimed that the neck bone snapped, leaving her holding the skull. At that precise moment, a vehicle pulled into the driveway, panicking her. She stuffed the skull into a plastic grocery bag, drove to a local landfill, and discarded it among the household trash. This shocking admission, delivered with the casual air of someone recounting a routine domestic chore, cemented her reputation among local authorities as a remorseless predator, earning her the chilling moniker of the Black Widow. Despite the missing skull, the forensic expertise of Dr. Owsley proved decisive. By meticulously analyzing 3 small bone fragments recovered from the burial site, the anthropologist was able to identify microscopic trauma consistent with a significant blow to the head or a gunshot wound. This scientific finding directly contradicted Ulisa's claims of a natural death, providing the Commonwealth's attorney with the necessary evidence to officially charge her with first-degree murder in Amelia County. In the face of two overwhelming capital murder cases, backed by forensic toxicology, digital search histories, and the skeletal remains of her victims, Ulisa Chavers and her legal counsel recognized that a trial would almost certainly result in a conviction and a potential sentence of life without parole. To avoid this outcome, she entered into a legal agreement known as an Alford plea. Under this specific legal framework, the defendant does not explicitly admit guilt, but formally acknowledges that the prosecution possesses more than sufficient evidence to secure a conviction at trial. The judicial system delivered its final verdict, sentencing Ulisa Chavers to serve a total of 43 years in prison for her crimes, ensuring that she would spend the remainder of her natural life behind bars. For the families of Cody Bowles and Clint Chavers, the resolution brought a profound sense of justice and closure, proving that even the most deeply buried secrets can eventually be brought to light through the relentless pursuit of truth. When analyzing these cases, several critical lessons emerge regarding the motives, the methods, and the systemic vulnerabilities that allow such crimes to occur. The primary driver in both homicides was financial exploitation. Ulisa Chavers viewed her partners not as companions, but as source streams of guaranteed federal income. In Beote Hot instances, the victims possessed reliable monthly government benefits, a disability pension for Cody, and retirement benefits for Clint that represented a steady stream of revenue. The crimes were triggered when this financial control was threatened. In Cody's case, his decision to transfer his power of attorney to his eldest son, David, represented an immediate financial threat to Ulisa, who was entirely dependent on his $1,400 monthly check. By eliminating Cody, she believed she could maintain control over his bank account indefinitely, assuming that her successful 15-year deception regarding Clint's death had rendered her completely immune to detection. This repetition highlights a common psychological trait among serial offenders: hubris. Because she had successfully evaded law enforcement and the Social Security Administration for a decade and a half by simply burying Clint in a flower bed and continuing to cash his checks, Ulisa grew overconfident. She believed that the systems of government and the local police were too slow and bureaucratic to notice a missing disabled man. She assumed that by painting Cody as an eccentric, anti-government biker who wanted to live off the grid, she could satisfy any casual inquiries into his whereabouts. The investigation, however, succeeded because of several crucial details and clues that the police utilized to dismantle her web of lies. First and foremost was the absolute persistence of Cody's family. Lee and David Bowles refused to accept the narrative that their father had simply abandoned them. Their intimate knowledge of his character, his reliable communication habits, and his medical vulnerabilities provided the initial catalyst for the police investigation. Second, the investigators relied heavily on the physical realities of medical science. While a person can easily lie about a missing person's location, they cannot falsify the physiological requirements of a damaged heart. The complete absence of pharmaceutical refills for 2 years was a powerful piece of circumstantial evidence that no creative story about a heart-curing surgery could overcome. This highlights the importance of checking medical and pharmaceutical databases early in missing persons cases involving vulnerable individuals. Third, the financial digital footprint proved invaluable. In the modern era, it is incredibly difficult for an individual to live entirely off the grid while actively utilizing an automated teller machine card. By tracing the geographic locations of the banking transactions, The detectives quickly established that the money was being withdrawn locally by Ulisa, completely undermining her claim that Cody was using the card in Montana. Fourth, the physical evidence of the pacemaker played a double role. It not only provided an immediate, positive identification of Cody as remains in the well, but its very presence refuted Ulisa's elaborate lie about a corrective surgery. In the forensic world, medical implants with registered serial numbers are virtually indestructible identifiers that can survive severe decomposition, offering investigators a direct link to the victim's identity. Finally, the digital forensics conducted on Ulisa's computer provided the definitive proof of premeditation. The search history concerning the lethal effects of benztropine on cardiac patients converted a difficult, undetermined cause of death into a clear, prosecutable case of first-degree murder by poisoning. This demonstrates that while physical bodies may decay, the digital footprints left behind by a modern criminal are often preserved, serving as a silent witness to their innermost thoughts and plans. To prevent such tragic cases in the future, society must draw several profound life lessons. First, there must be a greater awareness and protection for vulnerable, disabled, or elderly individuals within domestic partnerships. When one person holds complete, unchecked financial and medical power of attorney over a vulnerable partner, the potential for exploitation increases dramatically. Legal and social systems should implement periodic, independent wellness checks for individuals on long-term disability, especially when significant changes in power of attorney or representative payee status are proposed. Second, the case emphasizes the vital importance of maintaining strong, active family connections. It was the enduring love and vigilance of Cody's sons that ultimately brought his killer to justice. In an increasingly isolated world, staying in regular, meaningful contact with family members is the ultimate safeguard against those who might seek to isolate and exploit them. For law enforcement agencies, this case offers valuable strategies for solving similar crimes more rapidly. The success of the Louisa County Sheriff's Department and the Virginia State Police was rooted in their willingness to immediately collaborate with federal agencies, specifically the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General. By combining local investigative resources with federal authority, they were able to strategically suspend the victim's benefits, a move that effectively forced the perpetrator's hand and exposed the fraud. Furthermore, the investigators demonstrated the power of patient, non-confrontational interviewing. By allowing Ulisa to construct her own elaborate, ridiculous narratives, such as the claim of heart surgery or the presentation of a forged Christmas photograph, they locked her into a series of lies that could be systematically dismantled with hard, scientific evidence. This method is often far more effective than aggressive interrogation, as it allows the deceptive individual's own hubris to become their undoing. In the end, the resolution of this harrowing case stands as a powerful testament to the triumph of human empathy, systematic science, and unwavering justice. It reminds us that while evil can operate in the shadows of deception for a time, it is ultimately fragile when confronted by the persistent, dedicated efforts of those who honor the value of human life and refuse to let the forgotten be silenced. In the quiet and expansive landscapes of rural Virginia, where the passage of time is often marked by the changing of the leaves and the steady rhythm of close-knit communities, there exists an unspoken expectation of safety and mutual trust. Neighbors know one another. Families remain connected across generations, and the vast open spaces are viewed as sanctuaries of peace rather than pockets of isolation. Yet, beneath this serene surface, the very qualities that make these communities so appealing can sometimes be exploited by individuals who operate with a calculated and quiet malice. The cases of Reginald Cody Bowles and Clint Chavers serve as profound, sobering reminders of how easily trust can be weaponized within the domestic sphere. These tragedies highlight the critical importance of vigilance, the necessity of maintaining robust family connections, and the tireless dedication of law enforcement professionals who refuse to let the truth remain buried. By examining these complex cases through a logical and analytical lens, we can uncover the psychological underpinnings of these crimes, understand the sophisticated investigative techniques used to solve them, and extract vital lessons to protect the vulnerable in our own communities. To understand how these events unfolded, one must first look at the lives of those who were lost. Reginald Cody Bowles, born in December of the year 1953 in North Chesterfield, Virginia, was a man who possessed a deep love for life, a passion for mechanics, and a strong devotion to his family. Rising from a modest background, he chose to pursue a skilled trade rather than a traditional academic path, becoming a highly talented printer for a local press. His hands were his tools, and his mind was constantly engaged in the intricate workings of machinery. This natural aptitude found its ultimate expression in his favorite hobby, which was building, repairing, and racing motorcycles. To those who knew him, Cody was a man of remarkable talent, capable of transforming a collection of metal parts into a beautiful, high-performance machine. His love for the open road was not merely about speed, but about the freedom and camaraderie that came with the motorcycle lifestyle. During his 20s, Cody attempted to settle into a conventional domestic life, marrying a young woman and fathering 2 sons, David and Lee. However, the pull of his hobbies and the lifestyle associated with them eventually created a divergence in paths, leading to an amicable divorce. Despite the separation, Cody remained a dedicated father, sharing his love for the mountains and motorcycle rides with his sons, creating memories that they would cherish for decades. His life took a dramatic turn in his early 30s, specifically in the year 1985, when he suffered a massive heart attack. The medical crisis left him in a coma for 2 months and forced him to embark on a long, arduous journey of physical rehabilitation. With the assistance of a pacemaker, a defibrillator, and a strict regimen of daily medications, Cody managed to reclaim his life, returning to his hobbies and moving in with his beloved mother to assist in her care. It was in the year 1996 that Cody's path crossed with Ulisa Mary Chavers, a woman who worked at a local convenience store. What began as a casual acquaintance quickly blossomed into a long-term relationship. Desiring a quieter life with more space for his motorcycle warehouse, the couple eventually purchased a property in Louisa County, Virginia. For 12 years, they shared a home, and to the outside world, they seemed to have established a stable partnership. However, beneath the surface of this domestic arrangement lay a web of financial dependency and psychological manipulation that would only come to light years later. The first major cracks in this facade appeared around the Christmas season of the year 2006, which would be the final time Cody's sons saw their father in person. At that family gathering, Cody had expressed a strong desire to make his eldest son, David, the executor of his estate and the holder of his medical and financial power of attorney. This was a significant decision, as Ulisa had previously established power of attorney over his affairs. Cody had grown uncomfortable with this arrangement, and his desire to transition these responsibilities to his son suggested a growing awareness of his own vulnerability and perhaps a subtle shift in his trust. When Thanksgiving of the year 2007 arrived, Cody's son Lee drove 12 hours to visit his father, only to be met with a baffling scenario. Upon his arrival at the Ulisa County residence, Ulisa informed him that Cody was not there, claiming he had gone off with his motorcycle friends. While Cody was indeed fond of the biker lifestyle, the idea that he would completely stand up his son after a long journey was entirely out of character. As months turned into years, the excuses provided by Ulisa grew increasingly elaborate and implausible. She claimed that Cody had traveled to the Sturgis motorcycle rally, moved to Butte, Montana, joined an outlaw group, and was actively choosing to live off the grid. To explain his complete silence, she painted a picture of a man who had grown resentful of his children, claiming he believed they were only interested in his money, and asserted that he had embraced a sovereign lifestyle, rejecting all government and familial contact. For a long time, the family struggled with cognitive dissonance, wanting to respect their father and independence while grappling with the mounting absurdity of the narrative. Cody was a man who required a complex daily regimen of heart medications to survive. He was a father who never missed a birthday or a holiday phone call. The realization that something was deeply wrong eventually prompted his sons to contact the Virginia authorities in October of the year 2008, officially initiating a missing persons investigation. When the Ulisa County Sheriff's Office took the case, they were faced with a classic investigation of a disappearing individual where no immediate evidence of a crime existed. However, the investigators quickly demonstrated the importance of methodical verification, choosing to systematically test every claim made by the primary person of interest, rather than accepting her narrative at face value. This approach is the cornerstone of effective police work, relying on objective data rather than subjective explanations. The first major clue that shattered the credibility of the runaway biker theory was medical. Investigators contacted Cody's local pharmacy and conducted a nationwide search to determine if his vital cardiac prescriptions had been transferred or filled anywhere in the country. The results were clear. No prescriptions had been refilled for over 2 years. For a man with a severe heart condition who relied on a pacemaker and a defibrillator, the absence of medication was not a lifestyle choice. It was a physical impossibility for survival. Armed with this critical piece of information, detectives interviewed Ulisa again, employing a tactical approach designed to lock her into a specific story. In a display of what can only be described as remarkable audacity, Ulisa attempted to explain in a way the medical discrepancy by inventing an entirely fictional medical breakthrough. She claimed that Cody had undergone a highly advanced, federally approved surgical procedure that cut away the damaged portion of his heart, completely curing his condition and rendering his pacemaker, defibrillator, and medications entirely obsolete. When investigators consulted Cody's cardiologist, the medical staff confirmed that such a claim was medically absurd and that Cody would absolutely require his medical devices and medications for the rest of his natural life. The financial records provided the second major clue. Ulisa claimed that Cody was supporting himself in Montana by withdrawing his monthly Social Security disability benefit of $1,400 using an automated teller machine card. However, a detailed analysis of their joint bank account revealed no out-of-state activity whatsoever. Instead, The records showed a consistent pattern of local withdrawals performed entirely by Ulisa within the state of Virginia. The financial motive was becoming increasingly apparent. Cody's monthly benefit was a vital source of income for her, and his disappearance allowed her to maintain access to these funds without his presence. Recognizing the financial leverage at play, investigators collaborated with the Social Security Administration's Office of the Inspector General. In a brilliant administrative maneuver, the agency officially suspended Cody's benefits under the assumption that if he were indeed alive and living off the grid, the sudden cessation of his primary income would force him to contact authorities to resolve the issue. When months passed and no contact was made, the suspicion of foul play transitioned from a strong theory to an absolute certainty. The final undoing of the perpetrator's deception came through a high-tech blunder of her own making. During a follow-up visit by investigators in February of the year 2009, Ulisa claimed that Cody had visited her for Christmas of the year 2008. To prove her claim, she produced a small digital camera and showed the detectives a photograph of Cody and herself exchanging gifts, complete with a digital date stamp indicating December 25, 2008. Recognizing the potential of this evidence, the investigators requested the secure digital card from the camera. Upon analyzing the image on a larger computer screen, the artificial nature of the evidence became glaringly obvious. The photograph was not a direct digital image of a live scene, but rather a digital photograph taken of an older physical paper photograph. Cody's son Lee immediately identified the image as having been taken at least 10 years prior, noting that his father appeared significantly younger and pointing out a distinctive, dust-covered video home system tape rewinder in the background that had not been used in many years. The digital date stamp had been manually manipulated on the camera to fabricate an alibi. This attempt to manufacture evidence became the ultimate legal catalyst, providing the probable cause necessary to secure a comprehensive search warrant for the 11-acre property in Ulisa County. On March 6, 2009, 5 months after the initial missing persons report, a multi-agency search team, accompanied by highly trained cadaver dogs, descended upon the property. The search was meticulous, covering multiple structures, a trailer, and the surrounding land. The breakthrough occurred when a cadaver dog exhibited a strong reaction near an old, unused 33-foot-deep bored well located in a field. Upon removing the cover, the unmistakable presence of organic decay was detected. An investigator descended into the narrow, dark shaft using a ladder and recovered a large bundle wrapped in a sleeping bag and a blanket. Upon unzipping the bundle, investigators discovered the remains of a deceased individual. The definitive confirmation of identity came immediately when the team observed a pacemaker nestled within the chest cavity. The serial number on the medical device matched Cody's medical records perfectly. The search for a missing father had ended in a tragic recovery, and the focus of the investigation immediately shifted to a homicide inquiry. While the physical recovery of the body was a monumental success for the search teams, the scientific challenge of establishing the precise cause of death remained. Due to the prolonged period of time the remains had spent in the well, traditional autopsy methods were unable to immediately determine a cause of death, leading the medical examiner to list it as undetermined. However, toxicological analysis revealed an extraordinary detail: the presence of benztropine at levels 4 times the lethal limit. Benztropine is a prescription medication primarily used to treat movement disorders associated with Parkinson's disease. Cody had never been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, nor did he have any legitimate prescription for this medication. Furthermore, medical experts confirmed that administering benztropine to an individual with a severe cardiac condition and a pacemaker is incredibly dangerous, as the drug severely slows the heart rate. While prosecutors worked to build a circumstantial case of poisoning, investigators dug deeper into Ulisa's past, seeking to understand if this was an isolated incident of desperation or the pattern of a practiced offender. They interviewed her daughter, Teresa, who revealed a deeply unsettling family history. Teresa's biological father, Clint Chavers, had vanished under mysterious circumstances in the year 1994. Clint was a proud veteran of World War II who had later worked as a truck driver and owned a local business. Significantly older than Ulisa, Clint had suffered from declining health, eventually requiring the amputation of a leg, which confined him to a wheelchair. Teresa recalled that in 1994, when she was a teenager in high school, her mother had abruptly called her and instructed her not to come home, but to stay at a friend's house. When she was finally allowed to return, her mother informed her that Clint had passed away, that the Veterans Affairs Administration had picked up his body, and that he had been cremated. Teresa recalled that the house had been thoroughly cleaned and carried a powerful odor of bleach. There was no funeral, no memorial service, and no ashes were ever returned to the family. Detectives immediately contacted the Veterans Affairs Administration and the Social Security Administration. They discovered that the Veterans Affairs Administration had no record of collecting Clint's body, and the Social Security Administration had never been notified of his death. For 15 years, Ulisa had maintained a joint bank account in Clint's name, systematically collecting and spending his monthly retirement benefits. Faced with this overwhelming evidence of systemic fraud and the parallel disappearance of a husband, investigators re-interviewed Ulisa in prison. In a chillingly matter-of-fact tone, she admitted that Clint had died at their rental property in Amelia County, Virginia, in 1994. She claimed his death was due to natural causes, but admitted she had buried his body in the backyard flower bed to avoid reporting the death and losing his benefits. The most macabre detail of her confession emerged when she described her decision to move from the Amelia County property a year later. Fearing that the new tenants might discover the shallow grave, she decided to exhume the remains. As she attempted to pull the body from the ground, she claimed she heard the sound of traffic and an airplane overhead. Panicking and fearing she would be seen, she used a shovel to separate the head from the torso, placed the skull in a plastic trash bag, and disposed of it in a local landfill, leaving the rest of the remains buried in the backyard. This astonishing confession led a multi-agency task force to the former rental property in Amelia County, located approximately 60 miles away from Louisa County. Utilizing cadaver dogs and the expertise of a forensic anthropologist, teams carefully excavated the backyard. They recovered the skeletal remains of Clint Chavers, but as expected, the skull was missing. To bridge the gap left by the undetermined cause of death in both cases, investigators sought the assistance of advanced forensic specialists. They sent Clint's recovered remains, specifically 3 small fragments of the skull that had been found during the careful sifting of the soil, to the renowned forensic anthropologist, Dr. Douglas Owsley, at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. Through microscopic analysis of these bone fragments, Dr. Owsley was able to identify clear evidence of physical trauma, specifically consistent with a significant blow to the head or a gunshot wound, effectively disproving the natural causes narrative and allowing prosecutors to file murder charges in Amelia County. In Cody's case, investigators conducted digital forensics on the computer seized from the Ulisa County residence. They discovered that prior to Cody's disappearance, someone had used the computer to conduct extensive research on the specific effects of benztropine on individuals with severe heart conditions. This evidence of premeditation, combined with the lethal toxicological findings, provided a powerful circumstantial case. Rather than risk a trial where they faced the potential of consecutive life sentences, Ulisa and her defense counsel chose to enter into a plea agreement. She offered an Alford plea, a legal maneuver where a defendant maintains their innocence but acknowledges that the prosecution possesses sufficient evidence to secure a conviction. The court accepted the plea, and she was sentenced to a total of 73 years in prison, with the judge ruling she would serve 43 years actively incarcerated. The psychological profile of the perpetrator in these cases reveals a classic example of what criminologists often refer to as the Black Widow archetype. This term describes a specific type of offender who targets individuals within their own domestic circle, typically husbands, partners, or family members, motivated primarily by financial gain, control, or the elimination of perceived burdens. These offenders often rely on low-tech, highly intimate methods of harm, such as poisoning or exploiting existing medical vulnerabilities, which allows the initial death to appear natural or accidental. In both of these cases, the primary motivator was undeniably financial. Clint Chavers was an older man with significant health issues who required substantial care. By ending his life, she not only relieved herself of the physical burden of caregiving, but also secured a steady stream of government benefits that she continued to collect illegally for 15 years. When she entered into a relationship with Cody Bowles, she established a similar pattern of dependency. However, when Cody expressed his intention to transfer his power of attorney and estate executorship to his son David, she faced the immediate prospect of financial ruin and a loss of control over his assets. In her mind, the solution was to eliminate the threat of this financial transition. What is particularly striking about this psychological profile is the total lack of empathy and the chilling detachment displayed during the commission of these acts and the subsequent cover-ups. To live in a home for years, knowing that a former partner is buried in the yard, or to continue living on a property where another partner has been placed in a well, requires a profound level of emotional dissociation. Her ability to lie to the faces of grieving children, to paint their missing father as a deadbeat who abandoned them, and to manufacture digital evidence shows a deeply pathological disregard for human emotion. She believed that because she had successfully evaded justice for 15 years, following the death of Clint Chavers, she was entirely untouchable, a cognitive bias common among repeat offenders that ultimately leads to their downfall. The resolution of these cases offers profound, enduring life lessons for individuals, families, and communities. The first and most critical lesson is the absolute importance of maintaining active, regular, and independent communication with family members, especially those who may be vulnerable due to health issues or advanced age. Cody's sons, despite their initial hesitation to infringe upon their father's privacy, ultimately saved his memory and secured justice Because they refused to accept a narrative that did not align with the man they knew. Families must remain vigilant when a loved one's communication patterns abruptly change, or when a partner or caregiver begins to isolate them from their support network. Isolation is the primary tool of the domestic abuser and the financial predator. Maintaining open channels of communication is the most effective shield against it. The second lesson involves the management of legal and financial instruments, such as powers of attorney and wills. These documents carry immense power, granting individuals total control over another person's medical care, housing, and financial assets. It is vital that these arrangements are entered into with extreme caution and that there are built-in systems of oversight. Family members should discuss these matters openly and, whenever possible, involve independent legal professionals to ensure that no single individual holds unchecked power over a vulnerable person's life and assets. Furthermore, this case highlights the critical role of social and institutional systems in detecting elder abuse and financial exploitation. Financial institutions, pharmacies, and government agencies must work collaboratively to flag unusual activities. When a person with a severe medical condition suddenly stops filling life-saving prescriptions, or when a joint account shows massive local withdrawals, but absolutely no medical activity, these discrepancies should trigger automatic welfare checks. The community as a whole must cultivate an environment where people look out for one another, and where unusual patterns are reported and investigated rather than dismissed as private family matters. For law enforcement and investigative agencies, these cases offer invaluable experiences on how to identify, track, and apprehend repeat offenders more rapidly. The first key experience is the power of early interagency collaboration. In this investigation, the turning point occurred when local sheriff's deputies joined forces with the Social Security Administration's Office of the Inspector General. By combining local investigative resources with federal financial tracking and administrative powers, they were able to quickly dismantle the suspect's financial motive and prove that the victim was not living off the grid. Law enforcement agencies should establish permanent, rapid communication channels with financial and federal agencies to streamline the tracking of missing persons' assets and benefits. The second vital investigative lesson is the absolute necessity of rigorous verification over verbal testimony. In the early stages of a missing persons case, it is easy to accept a plausible explanation from a spouse or live-in partner who is traditionally viewed as the person closest to the missing individual. However, investigators must treat every verbal statement as a hypothesis that requires objective verification. By systematically checking prescription records, analyzing bank statements for geographic consistency, and consulting medical experts regarding the feasibility of the suspect's medical claims, the detectives in this case built an ironclad foundation of objective truth long before the physical evidence was recovered. Additionally, the case demonstrates the incredible value of advanced forensic sciences, particularly digital forensics and forensic anthropology. The analysis of the secure digital card from the camera revealed the manufactured nature of the photograph, which provided the vital legal leverage needed for the search warrant. Meanwhile, the microscopic analysis of the bone fragments by the Smithsonian Institution provided the physical evidence of trauma necessary to secure a murder indictment in a case that was 15 years cold. Law enforcement agencies must continue to invest in, train for, and utilize these highly specialized scientific disciplines recognizing that even when a body is concealed for decades or subjected to extreme environmental conditions, modern science can still unlock the secrets of how a life was ended. Ultimately, the story of these investigations is a testament to the victory of justice over deceit and the triumph of human empathy over calculated cruelty. The memory of Reginald Cody Bowles and Clint Chavers is honored not by the sensationalism of their tragic ends, but by the relentless pursuit of truth by their families and the investigative forces who refuse to give up. Cody was a man who lived with a vibrant, joyful spirit, a father who loved his children, and a craftsman who found beauty in the mechanical world. Clint was a brave veteran who served his nation and worked hard to support his family. Their lives were cut short by an individual who viewed them merely as financial assets to be exploited. Through the coordinated efforts of local sheriff's departments, federal agents, medical examiners, and forensic scientists, the intricate web of lies constructed over 2 decades was completely unraveled. The resolution of these cases sends a powerful message to those who believe they can exploit the isolation of rural areas or the trust of a domestic relationship. The truth cannot be buried forever, and the community will always stand united to protect its own, honor the lost, and ensure that justice prevails. The human capacity for deception often reveals itself in the quietest corners of our communities, where trust is taken for granted and the bond between individuals is assumed to be sacred. In the quiet landscapes of Virginia, a series of events unfolded that would challenge the collective trust of several families and highlight the chilling reality of domestic exploitation. The study of crime, particularly crimes committed within the domestic sphere, often reveals that the most dangerous threats do not always come from the outside world, but can sometimes reside within the very walls one calls home. The case of a middle-aged biker who vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of conflicting stories, false clues, and eventually the discovery of a dark past, serves as a profound warning about the vulnerabilities of trust and the absolute necessity of institutional and personal vigilance. By analyzing the motives behind these actions, the psychological profiles of those who commit them, the crucial details that law enforcement officers rely upon to uncover the truth, and the structural loopholes that allow such behavior to persist, we can draw valuable life lessons to protect our families and improve our collective security. To understand why cases of this nature occur with such disturbing frequency, one must examine the intersection of financial dependence, psychological manipulation, and the quiet isolation of vulnerable individuals. In many domestic homicides and missing persons cases, the primary motivator is remarkably simple, though wrapped in complex emotional manipulation, and that motivator is financial gain. When an individual is entirely dependent on another person for their livelihood, or when they view another person as a continuous source of income, the potential for exploitation increases dramatically. In the case of Reginald Cody Bowles, a man whose life was defined by his love for motorcycles, hands-on mechanical work, and his close connection to his family, his monthly disability pension of $1,400 became a target. For an observer, this might seem like a modest sum of money, hardly worth the price of a human life or the risk of lifetime imprisonment. However, to someone who refuses to work, who relies completely on others to survive, and who has grown accustomed to a lifestyle funded by another person's labor or state support, that modest monthly sum represents security, control, and freedom from responsibility. The frequency of these crimes is also exacerbated by the ease with which a perpetrator can exploit the trust of both the victim and the system. The modern world relies heavily on automated systems, direct deposits, and digital transactions. While these advancements offer immense convenience, they also create a buffer of anonymity. A monthly check can be deposited into a joint bank account, and as long as no one alerts the issuing authority of a change in status, the funds will continue to flow. This digital silence allows a deceptive individual to maintain the illusion of life long after a person has vanished. Furthermore, perpetrators often exploit the lifestyle choices of their victims to construct plausible narratives for their absence. If a person is known to enjoy travel, has a passion for the open road, or has expressed a desire to live off the grid, a deceptive partner can easily paint a picture of a sudden, voluntary departure. They rely on the hesitation of family members to intrude on a loved one's privacy, betting that weeks, months, or even years will pass before suspicions overcome polite restraint. When we examine the psychological sophistication of the perpetrator in this case, we see a fascinating contrast between calculated opportunism and shocking audacity. This individual, who would eventually earn a notorious reputation in the public eye, did not possess a brilliant criminal mind, but rather an extreme level of emotional detachment and a belief in her own ability to manipulate others. The sophistication of such criminals lies not in complex schemes, but in their capacity to remain calm under pressure, to look investigators in the eye, and to offer explanations that, while absurd upon close inspection, are delivered ve capitahat, absolute confidence. This audacity is a common trait among those who repeat their offenses. Having successfully evaded detection for a past crime, they develop a sense of invincibility. They begin to believe that they can control any situation, rewrite any narrative, and satisfy any inquiry with a simple, fabricated story. This sense of invincibility, however, is precisely what leads to their undoing, as they often underestimate the persistent dedication of law enforcement and the scientific precision of modern forensics. When the police began to investigate the disappearance of Cody Bowles, they did not rely on a single breakthrough, but on a meticulous process of verification, looking for the tiny discrepancies where a fabricated story begins to fray at the edges. The initial clue that raised alarms was not a physical piece of evidence, but a profound contradiction in character. Cody Bowles was a devoted father who, despite his love for the motorcycle lifestyle, maintained regular contact with his sons, particularly on birthdays and holidays. He was a man who, during a family gathering on the Christmas before he disappeared, discussed placing his son in charge of his will and financial power of attorney. This was not the behavior of a man who was planning to abandon his life, cut ties with his children, and ride off into the mountains of Montana to live off the grid. The police understand that a person's character and established habits are powerful investigative tools. When a story contradicts a person's lifelong behavior, it demands deeper scrutiny. As detectives began to pull at the threads of the narrative provided by the girlfriend Ulisa, they focused on the most critical aspect of Cody's physical existence, which was his medical dependency. Cody had suffered a massive heart attack in his 30s, an event that left him in a coma for 2 months and forced him to relearn basic life skills. He survived only with the aid of a pacemaker, a defibrillator, and a strict regimen of daily medications. When investigators consulted local pharmacies and national databases, they discovered that Cody had not filled a single prescription anywhere in the country for over 2 years. This was a critical turning point. A man who physically required medication to survive could not simply live in the wilderness without it. To counter this logical bottleneck, the perpetrator attempted to introduce a medical explanation so extraordinary that it bordered on the comical, illustrating the limits of her sophistication. She claimed that Cody had undergone a revolutionary surgical procedure that completely cured his heart condition, allowing him to live without medications or his pacemaker. She explained that surgeons had cut away the damaged portion of his heart after receiving federal approval for laser-assisted in situ keratomalosis, commonly known as LASIK surgery. This detail is a striking example of the mild irony that often accompanies criminal deception. In her attempt to sound knowledgeable, she confused a common laser eye surgery with an advanced cardiac procedure. When investigators verified this claim with Cody's cardiologist, the medical staff confirmed that such an assertion was entirely impossible. Cody would always require his pacemaker and his medications to stay alive. This absurd claim confirmed to detectives that they were dealing vekepte, a deliberate cover-up. They realized that every detail of her story was designed to lead them away from the property and toward a non-existent life in Montana. They began to systematically dismantle her claims through empirical evidence. When she asserted that Cody had been calling her sporadically, detectives obtained a search warrant for her phone records and found no such calls. When she claimed that Cody was withdrawing money from their joint account using an automated teller machine card in other states, a financial audit revealed that the only activity on the account consisted of local withdrawals made by her. The desperation of the perpetrator reached its peak when she realized that the pressure was mounting. In a desperate attempt to fabricate evidence of Cody's continued existence, she presented detectives with a digital photograph of Cody, claiming it had been taken on Christmas Day in the year 2008 at her daughter's home. She displayed the image on a small digital camera screen, complete with a current date stamp. However, she severely underestimated the observational skills of the investigators. Upon securing the secure digital storage card and analyzing the image on a larger screen, detectives observed that the image was actually a digital photograph of an older physical paper photograph. The image contained anachronistic details, including a dusty, orange video home system tape, rewinder in the background, a technology that had long since been replaced. When shown to Cody's son, he immediately recognized the image as a photograph taken over 10 years prior, noting that both his father and Ulisa looked significantly younger in the picture. This fabricated photograph was the ultimate piece of evidence that justified a comprehensive search warrant for the 11-acre property in Ulisa County. The search, conducted on March 6, 2009, brought together 3 teams of investigators, forensic specialists, and a trained cadaver dog. It was the keen sense of the cadaver dog that led investigators to a bored water well located in an open field on the property. Upon removing the cover, the unmistakable odor of decay confirmed their worst fears. A recovery effort was initiated, and a detective lowered himself into the dark well to retrieve a bundle wrapped in a sleeping bag and a blanket. Inside, forensic teams discovered the remains of Cody Bowles, identified conclusively by the unique serial number on the pacemaker resting within his chest. The discovery of the body changed the nature of the investigation from a missing persons case to a recovery of justice. Yet, even as she watched the police retrieve the remains of her companion from the well, Ulisa maintained a cold, detached demeanor. She offered a new version of events, claiming that Cody had passed away from natural causes in his sleep and that she had merely hidden the body because he did not trust the authorities and wished to avoid their involvement. This explanation, however, was quickly challenged by forensic toxicology. Although the advanced state of decomposition prevented the medical examiner from establishing a traditional cause of death, toxicologists detected extremely high levels of benztropine in his system. Benztropine is a medication primarily prescribed to manage the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Cody had never been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and his medical records showed no such prescription. More importantly, medical experts confirmed that benztropine is highly dangerous for individuals with severe heart conditions, as it can cause fatal cardiac arrhythmias. The presence of this drug in lethal concentrations suggested a calculated poisoning, but to secure a conviction for first-degree murder, prosecutors needed to demonstrate premeditation and intent. The breakthrough came when investigators expanded their inquiry into Ulisa's past, speaking with her daughter Teresa. This interview unraveled a secondary mystery that had remained hidden for 15 years. Teresa revealed that her biological father, Clint Chavers, a veteran of World War I, who was significantly older than Ulisa, had vanished under mysterious circumstances in the year 1994. At the time of his disappearance, Clint was wheelchair-bound following the amputation of his leg. Ulisa had told her teenage daughter that the Veterans Affairs Administration had retrieved Clint's body for cremation, and she instructed her daughter not to return home for several days. When the young girl finally returned, she noted that the house had been meticulously cleaned and smelled strongly of household bleach. There was no funeral, no memorial service, and no ashes were ever returned to the family. The police immediately recognized the terrifying pattern. Upon contacting the Veterans Affairs Administration, they confirmed that no such transport or cremation services had ever been performed. A check with the Social Security Administration revealed that Clint Chavers' death had never been reported, and for 15 years, his retirement benefits had been deposited directly into a joint account, where they were systematically withdrawn by Ulisa. When confronted vacep, had this evidence at the regional jail, Ulisa exhibited the same chilling lack of emotion. She casually admitted that Clint had died of natural causes and that she had buried his remains in the backyard of a rental property they occupied in Amelia County, approximately 60 miles away. The subsequent search of the Amelia County property required extraordinary forensic patience. Under the supervision of a forensic anthropologist, teams sifted through the soil of a former flower bed. They eventually recovered small bone fragments, including a portion of a human skull. During her interviews, Ulisa offered another bizarre and unsettling explanation for the state of the remains. She claimed that when she was preparing to move from the property years earlier, she decided it was unwise to leave a body in the backyard. She attempted to exhume the remains herself, but during the process, the neck of the skeletal remains broke. Finding herself holding the skull as a neighbor pulled into the driveway, she panicked, placed the skull in a plastic bag, and disposed of it in a local landfill. This shocking admission, delivered with the casual tone of someone describing a routine chore, highlighted her profound lack of empathy and her view of human beings as mere financial commodities. Despite the missing portions of the skull, the forensic analysis performed by Dr. Onsley at the Smithsonian Institution provided the crucial evidence needed for prosecution. By examining the recovered skull fragments, the anthropologist identified distinct patterns of trauma that were inconsistent with a natural death, pointing instead to a significant blow to the head or a gunshot wound. Armed with this forensic determination, prosecutors in Amelia County were able to file a formal murder charge for the death of Clint Chavers. Back in Louisa County, a search of Ulisa's personal computer revealed that she had conducted internet searches regarding the lethal side effects of the Parkinson's disease medication on individuals with pacemakers and heart conditions. This digital footprint provided the clear evidence of premeditation and design that prosecutors needed to prove she had intentionally poisoned Cody Bowles. Faced with the overwhelming weight of physical, medical, digital, and forensic evidence in two separate jurisdictions, Ulisa and her legal counsel recognized the futility of a trial. She entered an Alford plea, a legal mechanism where a defendant does not explicitly admit guilt, but acknowledges that the state possesses more than sufficient evidence to secure a conviction. The court sentenced her to serve a total of 43 years in prison for her crimes, ensuring that she would spend the remainder of her life behind bars, unable to exploit or harm another trusting soul. The resolution of these cases brings several profound life lessons that we must consider to protect ourselves and our loved ones from such tragedies. The first and most vital lesson is the importance of maintaining strong, active, and uninterrupted communication with our family members, especially those who may be elderly, disabled, or isolated. In both of these instances, the perpetrator relied on the isolation of her victims to carry out her plans. Clint Chavers was an elderly, wheelchair-bound veteran with limited mobility, while Cody Bowles lived in a rural area, separated from his sons by long distances. When a loved one suddenly decreases their communication, or when their partner consistently makes excuses for their unavailability, it should never be dismissed lightly. We must be willing to ask difficult questions, to make personal visits, and to trust our instincts when a situation does not feel right. Another critical lesson lies in the management of legal and financial affairs. Power of attorney, joint bank accounts, and estate planning are powerful tools that should only be entrusted to individuals of proven character and integrity. Cody Bowles had expressed discomfort with his girlfriend maintaining control over his financial and medical decisions, and he had intended to transfer those responsibilities to his eldest son. Unfortunately, he did not act quickly enough to finalize those changes. This delay allowed the perpetrator to maintain control over his finances and his life. We must encourage our family members to establish clear, legally binding wills and powers of attorney early in life, and to update them immediately whenever personal circumstances or relationships change. Furthermore, we must address the systemic vulnerabilities that allow such crimes to go undetected for long periods. The fact that Clint Chavers' Social Security benefits were collected for 15 years after his death points to a critical need for integrated databases and proactive verification systems between medical facilities, law enforcement, and federal benefit agencies. To catch perpetrators faster and prevent these prolonged deceptions, we must advocate for several key improvements in administrative and investigative protocols. First, there should be automatic cross-referencing between public death registries, pension systems, and healthcare databases. If an individual who is receiving state benefits suddenly stops filling life-saving prescriptions or attending mandatory medical appointments for an extended period, it should automatically trigger a non-confrontational wellness check by local social services or law enforcement. Additionally, financial institutions should be equipped with advanced anomaly detection systems. A sudden change in spending patterns such as a transition from card usage across different geographic regions to local, repetitive automated teller machine withdrawals on an account belonging to a person reported to be traveling, should trigger safety alerts. For law enforcement, the key to solving these cases quickly lies in early, comprehensive background checks on domestic partners whenever a suspicious disappearance is reported. By looking into the past relationships and financial histories of those close to a missing person, investigators can identify patterns of behavior and potential red motives much earlier in the process. Ultimately, this story is a testament to the quiet power of justice, the brilliant dedication of our forensic scientists, and the enduring love of families who refuse to let their missing relatives be forgotten. The investigation into the disappearance of Cody Bowles succeeded because his sons refused to accept easy, convenient lies, and because the detectives of the Louisa County and Amelia County Sheriff's offices, alongside the federal agents of the Social Security Administration, worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. They sifted through the soil of flower beds, climbed down into dark wells, analyzed decades-old medical records, and utilized the cutting-edge expertise of world-class anthropologists to ensure that the voices of the victims could finally be heard. The memory of Cody Bowles, a man who lived his life with a passion for the open road, a talent for creating beautiful machinery, and a deep love for his children, is honored not by the tragedy of his end, but by the triumph of the truth that brought his killer to justice. Through awareness, active family involvement, and the continuous improvement of our protective systems, we can ensure that our homes remain places of safety, warmth, and genuine love, defeating the quiet shadows of deception with the bright light of truth and community solidarity. In the study of modern criminal psychology, there exists a quiet but persistent category of offenses that rely not on sudden, explosive acts of passion, but on the slow, methodical erosion of human trust and the deliberate exploitation of administrative systems. These cases, often categorized under the chilling archetype of the caregiver who turns into a predator, reveal a deep vulnerability in our social fabric. To understand why such tragedies occur with alarming frequency, one must examine the intersection of isolation, financial dependence, and the systemic loopholes that exist within public welfare and documentation frameworks. Often the perpetrator does not begin their journey with a grand theatrical scheme, but rather with a series of small, unchecked transgressions, such as misrepresenting a financial situation or assuming control over a vulnerable person's assets. When these initial deceptions succeed without immediate consequence, the individual develops a sense of cognitive invulnerability, believing that if they can manage the paperwork of a person's life, they can just as easily manage the narrative of their disappearance. This pattern of behavior is particularly dangerous because it thrives in quiet rural spaces where neighbors respect privacy, and where families, out of a desire to avoid conflict or domestic intrusion, may hesitate to question a partner's unusual explanations until years have already passed. The case of Reginald Cody Bowles, a resident of Louisa County in the state of Virginia, serves as a profound and sobering case study in how these deceptive dynamics operate. Born in the month of December in the year 1953 in North Chesterfield, Virginia, Cody was a man who possessed a natural talent for machinery, a deep love for the open road, and an enduring devotion to his family. Despite leaving high school early to pursue a practical trade, he established a successful career as a skilled printer, working for many years at a local press. His personal passions, however, were firmly rooted in the mechanical world, where he earned a reputation for his exceptional ability to build, repair, and race motorcycles. Friends and acquaintances often remarked on his remarkable craftsmanship, noting that the customized machines he produced were true testaments to his technical talent. In his 20s, Cody settled down, marrying a woman named Kathleen and welcoming 2 sons, David and Lee, into the world. Although his deep passion for the motorcycle lifestyle eventually contributed to an amicable divorce, he remained an active, loving, and reliable presence in the lives of his children, frequently taking them on motorcycle rides through the scenic mountains of Virginia and sharing his love for the outdoors. The trajectory of Cody's life changed dramatically in the mid-1980s when, at approximately 35 years of age, he suffered a catastrophic heart attack. The health crisis, brought on by demanding work shifts and the physical toll of his lifestyle, left him in a coma for 2 months. Showing immense resilience, Cody undertook the grueling journey of relearning how to walk, talk, and perform basic daily tasks, a process that deeply bonded him with his sons, who feared they would lose their father at a young age. While his physical recovery was remarkable, his heart was permanently damaged, requiring the surgical implantation of a pacemaker and a defibrillator, as well as a strict daily regimen of critical cardiac medications that were absolutely essential to sustain his life. Following a second divorce, Cody moved back in Vaikeep, Idaho, his mother, to assist in her care, receiving a modest disability pension of approximately $1,400 a month. It was during this period of quiet routine, in the year 1996, that Cody met Ulisa Mary Chavers at a local convenience store. What began as a casual conversation quickly blossomed into a long-term relationship, eventually leading them to purchase an 11-acre property in rural Louisa County, where Cody built a warehouse to continue his beloved hobby of working on motorcycles. For 12 years, the couple lived together on the secluded property. But beneath the surface of this quiet country life, a dangerous dependency was forming. Because Cody was reliant on his monthly disability checks and required regular medical monitoring, Ulisa established legal power of attorney over his medical and financial affairs. This legal designation, intended to protect a vulnerable individual in times of medical crisis, instead became a tool of total financial control. The critical turning point in this dynamic occurred during the Christmas holiday of the year 2006, which would be the very last time Cody's sons saw their father alive. During this family gathering, Cody expressed a deep discomfort with the fact that Ulisa held absolute power of attorney over his life. Recognizing his own vulnerability, he initiated a serious discussion with his eldest son, David, about changing his legal will and transferring his power of attorney to him, while also eagerly planning a future fishing trip with his sons. This crucial detail completely undermined any later claim that Cody was a man preparing to abandon his family or live a nomadic life, as it painted a clear picture of a father looking toward his future and seeking to secure his estate for the benefit of his children. The primary motive that drives such crimes is almost invariably financial survival paired with the fear of losing control. When an individual becomes entirely dependent on another person's steady monthly income, any threat to that income stream is perceived as an existential crisis. For a perpetrator accustomed to managing another person's funds, the prospect of having that power of attorney transferred to an active, protective family member represents the immediate end of their financial security. When Cody voiced his intention to place his son David in charge of his affairs, he unwittingly signed his own death warrant, triggering a desperate and cold-blooded calculation in the mind of a partner who had already learned, decades prior, how easy it was to make a human being vanish while keeping their bank account active. Following that fateful holiday season, Cody completely disappeared from public life. The first major indication of his absence came in the month of November in the year 2007, when his son Lee made a 12-hour drive to Virginia to attend a planned Thanksgiving dinner, only to arrive at the residence and find his father missing. When questioned, Ulisa offered a highly creative and dismissive explanation, claiming that Cody had simply run off with outlaw biker friends to live a nomadic lifestyle. Knowing his father's interest in motorcycles, Lee initially tried to respect his father's privacy, but as the months turned into years, the total lack of communication made no sense. Cody was a father who never missed a birthday or a Christmas phone call, and the passing of 2 consecutive years without a single word from him filled his sons with a growing, inescapable dread. In October of the year 2008, Lee and David made the decisive phone call to the Ulisa County Sheriff's Department, officially reporting their father missing and setting off an extraordinary investigation that would ultimately expose a calculated pattern of domestic homicide. The initial phase of the investigation presented detectives with a classic challenge of conflicting narratives. When investigators first visited the Ulisa County property, Ulisa maintained an extremely calm, polite, and cooperative demeanor, presenting Cody as a rebellious sovereign citizen who hated the federal government, disliked law enforcement, and had relocated to the wilderness near Butte, Montana, after attending the Sturgis motorcycle rally. This sophisticated framing was designed to exploit common stereotypes about motorcycle enthusiasts, suggesting to police that Cody had simply chosen to go off the grid and did not wish to be found. In many missing persons cases, such explanations can successfully deter further investigation, especially if the individual in question is an adult with a known passion for the open road. However, the detectives working in close collaboration with state police recognize that a thorough investigation requires verifying every single detail of a suspect's story rather than accepting it at face value. The first critical clue that completely shattered Ulisa's carefully constructed narrative lay in Cody's medical history. Detectives, understanding that Cody was entirely dependent on specialized cardiac medication to keep his heart from failing, launched a systematic inquiry into his pharmaceutical records. They contacted his local pharmacy and discovered that not a single one of his vital prescriptions had been refilled for over 2 years. Furthermore, a nationwide query revealed that his prescriptions had never been transferred to any other pharmacy in the United States. For a man with a severe heart condition, a pacemaker, and an implanted defibrillator, the complete cessation of medication was a biological impossibility. Without these treatments, he could not survive. Armed with this undeniable medical reality, investigators realized that they were no longer looking for a runaway biker, but were instead investigating a highly probable homicide. When detectives returned to question Ulisa, they employed a classic and highly effective investigative strategy, allowing her to speak freely and lock herself into a specific, detailed timeline. By maintaining a non-confrontational tone, they encouraged her to provide details that could be independently tested. During this interview, Ulisa's story began to shift in bizarre and contradictory ways. She claimed that Cody had been calling her sporadically from out of state, usually every 3 to 4 weeks, to check on her. However, when she voluntarily showed the detectives her telephone S-caller identification logs, a careful review of the history revealed absolutely no incoming out-of-state phone calls. When asked how Cody was supporting himself in Montana, she claimed he was using his automated teller machine card to withdraw cash from their joint bank account. Yet a detailed forensic audit of the couple's bank statements revealed no out-of-state financial activity whatsoever. The only transactions consisted of steady local withdrawals performed by Ulisa herself right there in Virginia. The sheer desperation of the perpetrator became fully apparent when she was pressed on the issue of Cody's medical dependency. Confronted with the fact that he could not survive without his heart medications, Ulisa fabricated a wildly imaginative medical miracle. She claimed that Cody had undergone an advanced surgical procedure in which doctors cut away the damaged lower third of his heart, completely correcting his cardiac issues and rendering his pacemaker and daily medications entirely unnecessary. To make the story sound authentic to the non-medical ear, she added the bizarre detail that the operation had been delayed until they received federal approval for a special laser surgery. Detectives immediately recognized this claim as an absolute fabrication. A quick, analytical consultation with Cody's cardiologist confirmed that such a procedure was medically impossible and that Cody would absolutely require his pacemaker, defibrillator, and prescription medications for the rest of his natural life. The investigation took a decisive step forward when local detectives collaborated with the Social Security Administration's Office of the Inspector General. Because Ulisa was acting as the representative payee for Cody's monthly benefits, the federal agency officially contacted her to demand proof of his whereabouts. When she failed to cooperate, the agency took the strategic step of suspending his monthly payments of $1,400. Investigators reasoned that if Cody were indeed alive and living off the grid, the sudden cutoff of his primary financial lifeline would inevitably force him to contact the government or resurface to protest the suspension. 2 months passed in complete silence, proving beyond any logical doubt that Cody was no longer alive to claim his funds, while Ulisa continued to sit in her quiet Virginia home, stripped of the financial motive that had driven her actions. In a final, desperate attempt to convince authorities that her boyfriend was still alive, Ulisa presented investigators with what she claimed was a recent photograph taken during the Christmas holiday of the year 2008, which she said they had celebrated together next door at her daughter's trailer. She showed the detectives a small digital camera screen displaying an image of Cody exchanging gifts, complete with a digital date stamp. When the investigator requested the secure digital memory card from the camera to download the image, Ulisa's daughter, who was unaware of her mother's dark secrets, readily handed it over. Back at the police department, a detailed computer analysis of the digital file revealed a clumsy and highly telling piece of criminal deception. The image on the card was not a direct photograph of a living person, but rather a digital photograph taken of an old physical paper photograph that had been taken at least a decade earlier. By analyzing the physical age of the subjects, the vintage clothing, and the presence of an obsolete, dust-covered videocassette recorder tape, rewinders shaped like a small car in the background, detectives confirmed that Ulisa had manually fabricated evidence to mislead the police. This act of desperation provided the necessary probable cause for a magistrate to issue a comprehensive search warrant for the 11-acre property. On March 6th in the year 2009, a multi-agency search team accompanied by a highly trained cadaver dog and forensic specialists descended upon the rural estate. The specialized canine, utilizing its acute olfactory capabilities, bypassed the various outbuildings and immediately began alerting on an old, unused, boarded-up water well located in an open field on the property. When investigators removed the wooden cover of the 33-foot-deep well, they were immediately struck by the unmistakable odor of organic decay. A rescue worker descended into the deep, dark shaft and recovered a large, heavy bundle wrapped in a sleeping bag and blankets. Upon unzipping the bundle, forensic teams discovered the badly decomposed remains of a male. Nestled within the chest cavity of the remains was the synthetic metallic casing of a pacemaker. By cross-referencing the unique serial numbers stamped on the medical device with manufacturer records, investigators instantly and indisputably confirmed that the body was that of Reginald Cody Bowles. While the physical recovery of the body provided the tragic confirmation the family had long feared, it also opened a door into a far wider, deeply disturbing history of violence. While the search was underway, an investigator sat with Ulisa inside the home, gently informing her that Cody's body had been found and urging her to tell the truth. Recognizing that her elaborate lies had collapsed, Ulisa immediately shifted her defense, claiming that Cody had simply died of natural causes during the night, and that she had hidden his body in the well only because he had begged her not to involve the authorities or the medical establishment. This calculated attempt to escape a murder charge by admitting only to the unlawful disposal of a body is a common tactic among sophisticated domestic perpetrators. Because the advanced decomposition of the remains made it exceptionally difficult for the local medical examiner to determine a definitive anatomical cause of death, it initially appeared that Ulisa might successfully avoid a homicide conviction, facing charges only for financial fraud and the concealment of a corpse. However, the relentless curiosity of the investigative team soon uncovered a second hidden chapter of horror. Detectives began digging into Ulisa's personal history, interviewing her biological daughter, Teresa. When asked about her mother's past relationships, Teresa revealed a shocking detail. Her biological father, Clint Chavers, a veteran of the Second World War, who had suffered from severe health issues and was confined to a wheelchair, had also vanished, without a trace, back in the year 1994. At the time, Teresa was a teenage high school student, and her mother had instructed her not to come home after school, subsequently claiming that Clint had died of natural causes, and that his body had been taken by a military medical squad to be cremated. When Teresa finally returned home, she found the house immaculately clean, smelling heavily of chemical bleach, with no funeral ever held and no cremated remains ever returned. Detectives immediately launched a parallel investigation into the fate of Clint Chavers, contacting the Veterans Affairs Department and the Social Security Administration. They quickly discovered that the military had absolutely no record of transporting or cremating Clint's body, and that the federal government had never been notified of his death. For 15 years, from the year 1994 until the year 2009, Ulisa had maintained a joint bank account in Clint's name, systematically collecting and spending his monthly government pension benefits while keeping his death a complete secret from the world. When investigators confronted Ulisa in jail with this devastating financial and administrative evidence, her cold